I was 16 when I joined the choir at our neighborhood church. It was an old, towering stone building that had stood there for over a century. And even though it had gone through renovations, the basement level, the area where the original organ was kept, remained untouched. Our choir director, Ms. Ellery, kept sheet music and old robes down there. One Sunday after service, she asked me to head down and grab a stack of hymnals. I didn't think twice. I'd been in the basement a few times before, but something about that day felt heavier. The air was thicker than usual, and the hum of the organ, though no one had touched it in years, seemed to echo faintly through the walls. As I walked down the narrow staircase, the light overhead flickered, then steadied. I made my way past the storage racks to the far corner where the old pipe organ stood. Its keys were dusty, its wooden frame chipped. But what made me pause was the bench. Someone had just moved it. I could tell by the scuff marks and the dust on the floor. I laughed nervously to myself, grabbed the stack of hymnals, and turned to go back upstairs. That's when I heard it. One low note, drawn out, deep, echoing. I froze. My first thought was that someone else had come down, but the stairs were silent. I turned around slowly, and the organ bench was back in place. I tried to convince myself it was air in the pipes or something shifting, but I started walking faster until I heard another note. Then another. A full chord, loud and dissonant, rang out through the room. I dropped the books. I spun around, and this time I saw it. Someone was sitting at the organ. Or something. It had the outline of a man, thin, hunched, but it was wrong. Its arms were too long, its head tilted at an unnatural angle. Its fingers danced across the keys, though they looked more like bony twigs than actual hands. As the music got louder, I swear the walls began to vibrate. Then it turned. It had no face, just hollow, gaping darkness where I should have been. I couldn't move. I wanted to scream, but my voice caught in my throat. It raised one of its long fingers and pointed at me. Then the lights went out. For a few seconds, I was engulfed in pitch blackness. I stumbled backward, heart hammering, trying to find the stairs. When the lights flickered back on, the figure was gone. But the organ keys were still moving. And there was something carved into the wood where it had sat. Sing for me. I ran. I don't even remember how I got up the stairs, but I didn't stop until I was outside, gasping for air under the sun. When I told Ms. Ellery, she went pale, then quietly said, "You saw him too, didn't you?" I never went back down to the basement after that. And 2 weeks later, they boarded up the organ room permanently. Still, sometimes when I pass by the church at night, I hear it, the same dissonant chord echoing through the stone walls. And I wonder if it's still waiting for me to sing. I was raised Catholic, so going to confession was something I grew up with. Our church had these old wooden confessionals tucked away in the back corner. 2 booths on either side of a center divider where the priest sat. It was all very traditional, dimly lit, the kind of thing you'd expect in an old European cathedral. One Friday evening during Lent, I decided to stop by and confess after a particularly rough week. I wasn't even sure why I felt so compelled. It was like something was drawing me there. The church was mostly empty when I arrived. Just the faint scent of incense lingering in the air and the soft echo of my footsteps on the marble floor. The booths weren't usually open at that hour, but when I reached them, I saw the middle curtain drawn, the red occupied, light glowing above the priest's side. I stepped in the left booth, knelt, and waited. The wooden divider between us had one of those sliding panels covered by a thin lace curtain. After a moment, it slid open. I whispered, "Bless me, Father, for I have sinned." I started to speak, but something felt off. The silence on the other side wasn't like usual. It wasn't patient or warm. It was cold, expectant, almost hungry. I hesitated. "Father." Finally, I heard something, but it wasn't a voice. It was breathing. Deep, raspy, wet breathing. Like whoever or whatever was on the other side had lungs filled with fluid. I felt a chill creep up my spine. Then it whispered, "There is no forgiveness for you." I froze. My mouth went dry. I didn't know if I'd heard it right. I stammered, Again, louder this time, the voice said, "There's no forgiveness, only death." Then the breathing stopped, and the panels slammed shut. I burst out of the booth, heart racing. I pulled back the curtain to the middle compartment to ask the priest what was going on. But the seat was empty. There was no one there. The red light was still glowing. The small seat was perfectly still. I leaned closer and saw something scratched into the wooden wall. It was my name, carved deeply, freshly. I stumbled back and turned to leave, but standing by the door was a man in priest's robes, his face hidden in shadow. I called out, "Excuse me? Were you just in the confessional?" No answer. He slowly raised his hand and pointed back toward the booths. I blinked, and he was gone. Just like that, I ran out of the church into the night. I didn't look back. The next morning, I went to the office to ask who had been on confession duty the night before. The secretary looked confused and told me there weren't any priests scheduled after 5 p.m. It was almost 8 when I went in. That booth stayed locked for months afterward. Eventually, they had it removed completely during renovations. But sometimes, when I close my eyes at night, I hear that voice again. There is no forgiveness, only death. When I was a kid, my mom used to volunteer at our small town's church every week. She'd clean, arrange flowers near the altar, and sometimes polish the pews. During summer break, I'd tag along and spend hours wandering around, pretending I was on some grand adventure. There was one place I was told never to go, the choir loft. It sat high above the main sanctuary, a narrow staircase leading up behind a locked door. My mom said it was closed off after an accident years ago, something about old wood and a railing that gave way. But that only made me more curious. One afternoon, she left me alone in the sanctuary while she ran to the store. I had my Game Boy and a juice box, but after a while, boredom crept in. I wandered toward the back where the staircase was. To my surprise, the door was open just a crack. I knew I shouldn't, but something about that darkness beyond the doorway pulled at me. I slipped in and climbed the creaking stairs, one step at a time. At the top, I reached the choir loft. Dust hung in the air like fog, and the wooden floor creaked beneath my sneakers. Old chairs were scattered around. Broken music stands leaned against the walls, and a single organ sat in the corner, covered by a moth-eaten cloth. That's when I heard it, a low hum, like someone singing a hymn, just beneath their breath. At first I thought it was coming from below, but no, it was in the loft. I turned. Sitting in the back row was a girl, no older than me, wearing a pale, old-fashioned dress. Her eyes were fixed on me. "Are you supposed to be here?" I asked. She didn't answer, just smiled, but it wasn't warm. It was strange. Sad, maybe. She stood slowly and walked toward the organ. Without looking at me, she whispered, "They forgot about me." Before I could ask what she meant, she began to play. The melody was haunting, notes out of tune, a song I'd never heard before but instantly hated. The floor vibrated beneath my feet. The air turned cold. Then she turned around, and her face wasn't right. Her eyes were completely black, hollow. Her smile twisted unnaturally wide. Her skin was pale, waxy, like she wasn't alive. I stumbled backward, but the door at the top of the stairs slammed shut. I screamed and ran toward it, pounding with both fists. The music behind me grew louder, more frantic. Then I heard voices, dozens of them, crying, singing, screaming. I turned around, and the loft was full. Children, all wearing choir robes. Some had faces, others didn't. They stood shoulder to shoulder, staring at me. Then they all sang at once, one final, deafening note, and everything went black. I woke up in the sanctuary. My mom was shaking me awake. She said she'd found me passed out in the front pew. When I told her what happened, her face drained of color. She said, "Years ago, a section of the choir loft collapsed during a children's rehearsal. Several kids died. The girl I saw, her name was Miriam. We don't go to that church anymore, but every so often, I hear that same strange hymn playing from nowhere. And I wonder if Miriam is still waiting for the choir to finish their final song.